Britt Davenport here, and welcome to another episode of On the Vice. Today we will be tying a KB special in honor of Kevin Billings. A little backstory to this fly. Kevin Billings founded the Steelhead 419 Facebook group for those that are addicted to all things steelhead. The group has grown to over 6,000 members. It's a place for folks to learn and teach. It welcomes all with open arms, no matter if you're a gearhead, a fly fisher, or just wanting to learn. Unfortunately, I never had the pleasure of meeting Kevin in person, but we had many chats over Messenger. Unfortunately, we lost Kevin this past year after a long battle with COVID. Blue was one of his favorite colors to chase chrome with, and so shortly after his passing, I designed this fly both in his honor and in his memory. It's called a KB Special. For those of us that knew Kevin, never forget the head shake is real. With that, let's get started. Today, we are tying on a Norvise fly tying system. So some of the techniques I'll be demonstrating are maybe specific in how I'm applying them to the Norvise, but you can certainly tie any of the pattern using a static vise as well, using standard techniques. So I'll put my hook in the vise. And for this, I'm just using a steelhead hook. It's Tyre's Choice. I'm using a size 6, just because it shows up well for filming. So if you are using a Norvise, you want to get that hook shank as in line with that center as you can. That way it spins on axis. So that's pretty good there. Today we'll be using Semperfli Classic Waxed A-Dot in black. We're going to start by dressing our hook shank, attaching our thread. I'm not going to go very far back right now because we're going to add some flat mylar for the tag of this fly. So again, we'll just be using some flat mylar. I'm going to tie this in with the gold side facing me. That way when we wrap it, the silver side will be up. Throughout the video, you may see me spin my thread counterclockwise. That's to flatten the thread out. It helps us keep a nice smooth underbody. Some flies, that's not too important, but if you're doing a floss body fly or like this, we're using mylar for the body, it just helps it keep it tidy looking. So with that, we're going to wrap this all the way to the back. And this is one of those instances where if you have a static vise, you would just do the regular hand over hand. And we're just taking touching wraps, they're not overlapping. And then we're just going to advance it all the way back up to our thread of that. I'll go ahead and tie that off and just trim away the excess. So now we're going to move our thread to the rear of the hook. For this, I'm going to just take wide wraps, and we're going to put it just about to the front of where that barb would be. For the tail on this, we are using Peacock sword. So I'm just going to cut a little chunk of that off. I try to get them so they're all kind of pointed up. They have a natural curve to them. You don't have to. It looks nicer, but certainly the fish aren't going to care. And once it gets in the water, they'll go every which way. So I'm going to lash those down onto the hook shank. And then on top of that, I'm going to put just a small clump of dyed blue Guinea Hackle fibers. So I'll grab those and just place them on the top. You want them to be about as long. It's really just all up to you and how you like the looks of this one. It's not a pattern that's been around, so it is kind of just one I created and what was visually pleasing to my eyes. So I'm going to advance this forward and just wrap those butt ends down so that we have a somewhat smooth underbody. And again, you'll see me twisting my thread kind of counterclockwise just to flatten that out. Next, we will be using a piece of black ostrich herl. And I apologize, I don't have any real good ostrich herl. It's on my to-get list, I just haven't found any yet. So we're going to tie this in. We're going to wrap it right in front of that tail section. And for this, I'm just going to go hand over hand because we're just taking 1 or 2 wraps. You just want them to be touching wraps. And again, this herl is less than quality, so we'll just do the best we can with it. I'm going to tie that down. Once you get that tied down, you can just break that end off. If it doesn't break right at the thread, you can trim it off. And then we're going to advance our thread up to just behind that return eye. For the rib, we're just using some Semperfli small French silver tinsel. I'm going to tie this along the shank of the hook. So this is part of where, by tying it the whole length of it, will help keep a uniform body. If you were to just tie it in there at the back, you're going to end up with a bit of a bump at the tie-in point, and it just doesn't look as tidy that way. So I'm going to tie that in and bring it over to that far side of the hook. We'll use a hair clip just to capture that so it stays out of our way. And then we're just going to advance our thread back to that point where we tied it in. Next up, we're using some blue holographic tinsel. And I've cut a piece off of this. Now the tinsel body on this is only going to go about to here, and this will be dubbed, so it doesn't matter too much right here how much bulk you have built up there, but on other flies that's certainly something to be mindful of if you're not having a dubbed thorax. So we're going to start there, and we're just going to take touching wraps all the way to the rear. If you have a few gaps, don't worry about it. We will be coming forward again, so you can make sure to cover those up. As you get to the rear, watch the hook point. If you nick this, it will fall apart on you. And then we're just going to work our way all the way back up to that tie-in point. Switch hands and just tie that mylar off. And I'm just wrapping back to where I want my thorax to start. So we're going to have about that far, and we're going to be using a black saddle hackle, just a strung saddle hackle, and then some Feathercraft real seal dubbing. I've got some black and kingfisher blue, and I've just mixed a little bit of the blue into the black. And I've already done that, but so we're going to start by prepping our saddle hackle. I'm just going to strip away all that fluff on the bottom of it just so it's out of our way, and just trim it down a bit so it's easier to handle. We are going to be tying this in by the tip. So I'll grab the tip and strip those fibers back. go ahead and bind that down on the hook shank. Then I'm going to capture that with the hair clip as well. So for dubbing, again, I've just pre-mixed a little bit of that blue kingfisher into the black, and I'm going to wax my thread a little bit. The steel dubbing is really slick, so it's not the easiest to work with. I'm fairly new to working with it, but it is very slick, and so it can provide some difficulty. I'm going to go ahead and put a half hitch in there just in case I break my thread while I do this. So I'm going to give it a go the Norvise way. Because it is so thick, I do find it to be a little bit more difficult this way, but we'll give it a go. And hopefully we can get it to grab onto that thread. If not, I'll just dub it the normal way. There we go. So it does take a little bit. Like I said, it's just a very slick dubbing, and it's got very long fibers. So it definitely just takes a little bit of practice and getting used to using it. Actually, I'm just going to dub it the normal way because I'm just not getting the look I want with that. So I'm just going to spin this on. And again, it's just crazy slick. It's just a bit of a bear to work with. We do want it to look shaggy, so we'll pick it out a little as we go. So I'm going to dub that thorax and just tighten this as we go. And you do want to build in a slight taper. You want that to be a little bit bigger at the front. That way it'll help support the hackles that we're going to be tying in here shortly. I'll just do a bit more. Right there at the front. Okay, so we'll go with that. Now we are going to just put a half hitch in to save our work. Take our thread over to our bobbin over to our thread post, excuse me. Keep that tinsel back there, and now we're just going to take this saddle hackle, try to preen those fibers back to the rear. And now we're just going to palmer that through that thorax. I'll go ahead and tie that off. Tidy up that head a bit. Okay, and now we are going to put another half hitch in, and we're going to counter wrap that rib. So normally we would go this way, we're going to go the other way. So we're going to spin the vise away from us. And if you kind of wiggle it as you go, it'll help keep from trapping some of those fibers down. There will be some that get trapped down, and that's okay. We'll go through and pick it out a bit here in the end. I'm aiming to try to tie that off on the bottom. And so I've just locked my rear hub into the 180-degree spot. Now again, we'll go in and just tidy that head up a bit. Now at this point, if you want, you can, before you add the other feathers in, you can go through and pick these out if you'd like. Be careful not to break any of your hackles off. You can also just use the brush at this point to go in. This will actually get quite a few of them. If there's any that you just can't stand that are coming out the wrong spot, you can just use your scissors to trim them out. And now for the collar on this fly, we're going to be using a blue guinea and a peacock breast feather. So I'm just going to strip this fuzz away on the blue guinea. So we've got that feather prepared. We're going to be tying that in by the tip. Guinea is one of my absolute favorite materials to work with. I just really love how it looks on flies. So we're going to prepare that, and we're going to just tie that in by the tip. Get some good wraps down on it. If it's long enough, you don't need to use hackle pliers. You certainly can if it makes it easier. Now we're just going to preen those fibers back, and then we're going to take a few wraps, one directly in front of another, and then tie that off. If you end up with any sticking out the front, that's okay, don't worry about it. We'll take care of those here in a minute. You can just go in, and when you're trimming off that stem, you can trim any of those away. So we'll do a few more wraps just to tidy that head up a bit. Make sure we've got it bound down nice and tight. And now we'll take the peacock breast feather, and again, we'll just strip all that fluff off the bottom. Try to be careful doing it so you don't tear the stem away. That way you have more to grab onto, unlike I just did. And for this, again, we're going to be tying it in by the tip. So try to get as many fibers left on it as you can. They're not very big, but we're really only going to be getting one good wrap in anyways. So we'll cut those out. This is more just a halo, kind of that guinea hackle. So go in, bind that down. For this, I am going to be using hackle pliers because I tore the stem off. Try to preen those fibers back. That just helps make sure they go in the right direction. And see, I can't even get a good hold of this. There we go. We'll do our best. And we're just going to take, 1.5 wraps at most of this. You're just not going to get a lot out of it before you get into that bigger stem. When you're picking a feather out, if you can try to find one that has a nice slender stem further back, that will benefit you. Make it tie in a lot nicer. I'm going to go in and just trim that away as close as I can without cutting my thread. Now we're just going to go ahead and put a nice head on this. Tidy everything up a bit. Make sure all of our fibers are going to the rear like we want them to. And then we'll just put a finisher sew on it. I am going to put cement on this to finish it. So for that, I like to use Solar as clear. Sometimes I'll also use the black version. But the clear is what I grabbed. Do that, and then we'll just hit it with the UV light. And there we have it, the KB special in honor of Kevin Billings. We'll miss you, Kevin. We know you're up above fishing the big waters, hopefully catching a ton of steelhead up there. Hopefully you'll save some for us. Thank you for joining us on another episode of On the Vice, brought to you by Hackles and Herl Fly Fishing. If you find this content valuable, please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to click the bell to receive notifications on future content. We also love to hear feedback from you, so feel free to drop a comment down below, questions, comments, or even give us some suggestions for future videos you'd like to see. Keep in mind, we do provide custom order flies, so if you're interested, give us a DM on social media if you're interested in purchasing some custom order flies. As always, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.